Is Rich Rodriguez's hard edge philosophy a problem for WVU football? Simply put, that's going to be the headline topic here on this edition of Mountaineer Report, made possible by West Virginia Sports Now and available everywhere you get your podcasts, as well as on our YouTube channel and throughout the network. As always, I am Mike Asti, and I will be joined here by my co-host Luke Blain, and we're going to touch on what some now departing players have been saying, mostly cryptic messages on social media, but still have been saying about Rich Rodriguez, about the experience as a Mountaineer, and if it does uncover a bigger issue, because I think he would even have to agree they lost more players than he was expecting to lose this offseason. Last year was expected. This year they did lose more than expected. They, of course, cut many of those players and told them to leave, but not all of them. Some of them did choose to leave on their own. So we're going to get into all of that here, and we also will talk some Ross Hodge and Mountaineer hoops as well as they continue on in the Big 12, and maybe ask, who are the real Mountaineers? Because you really don't know day to day. You really do not know day to day, and even the metrics are confused. Ken Palm has no idea. They don't even know. They do not even know. Every 24-hour period, it's a difference of 10 spots, which makes no sense. Again, Luke Blain, Mike Asti here on Mountaineer Report. And Luke, as I said, is Rich Rod's hard edge philosophy a problem? And this was something that people kind of thought maybe could be the case. Most of the critics of the hire were kind of alluding to this, even though nationally, locally, regionally, even people that didn't like the program, certainly fans of the program and media, for the most part thought it was a good hire. You look at the resume, you look at his recent success, you look at the program, most people thought it was a good hire. But the people that didn't thought this would be why. That he would just be too stuck in his ways. He'd be too old school. He wouldn't allow fun. Players wouldn't want to deal with it and wouldn't want to be a part of it, even if they were good players and even if they respected his legacy. That's just not this modern era of player. He even answered that question that was asked at his intro presser, and then all throughout the season, people kept asking it different ways. And he always would say that he believed the best players and the players that fit him want to be coached, and he only wants hard edge players. He does not want a really talented guy that just wants the money. Even now that they have more money, he has even said, I believe the money is better now, but I don't want somebody who only wants the money. I want players that want to be coached that fit into hard edge. Jaheim White, Josiah Trotter, actually, even who never played for Rich Rod, left after Neil Brown's firing, but was maybe there a week, maybe met the man. He even dropped some comments that nobody, I believe the quote is, nobody F with Rich Rod in that locker room. Jaheim White, saying that there really wasn't fun to be had, and that was part of his decision. Granted, I can also tell you from sources, there are many that also believe that Jaheim White was kind of told, you can't guarantee to be the RB1 anymore. It might be best for you to leave. We want to bring in Cam Cook. We want to bring in others. So I don't think Rich Rod's losing sleep over losing Jaheim White. However, he also said it wasn't tons of fun during his 1 year as a Mountaineer. So do you believe that Rich Rod's hard edge philosophy is a problem for West Virginia?
Well, I think, we are in an age of college sports where players have more autonomy than they've ever had. And if they want to go somewhere where they can make more money and have the coach whisper sweet nothings into their ear at practice instead of being coached, then they are more than capable of doing that. And, I think that absolutely comes down to, winning, of course. WVU didn't really have a good season this past year. Players don't want to be somewhere where they don't feel like they can win.
Winning cures all in many respects.
Does cure
people
all.
just put up with things if you win. Yeah.
And you could see, after they won games this season, you had Rich Rod dancing in the locker room. That looked like a good time to be a part of. But honestly, being a fly on the wall in that looked like probably a good time. But I do definitely think that players, the dynamic of coach to player is changing, where players are not as willing to get that quote unquote hard coaching that football is absolutely associated with, unless, of course, you did mention, talking about respecting Rich Rod's legacy. Players went through that and respected it with guys like Nick Saban.
Right.
You've seen the practice clips of Nick Saban. Nick Saban's pretty wild out there. I don't really see much of a difference between him and Rich Rod, but
there
Nick
are
Saban
some that
has
believe
winning
that
resume.
Yeah, there are some that believe, though, he fired on purpose when he did because he didn't want to deal with NIL, this modern era, players making more than coaches, coaches really having no authority. Even with his resume, he felt like he was losing power. There are some that kind of have hinted that might have been why Nick Saban retired. Obviously, he was older and already had 7 rings, but that could have been part of it. So even him, maybe that Nick Saban philosophy, maybe that wouldn't work today. I don't know. Maybe players would say that they don't want to deal with Nick Saban today. That's a thought.
That could be true. But I mean, at the end of the day, if a player has an opportunity to go make more money somewhere else,
right?
You have to have a good reason for making them want to be where you are. If you aren't offering as much money and you're coming in off of a rougher season, there's definitely something to be had there. And I mean, they're bringing in talent through the portal. Like they're absolutely bringing in talent. They're bringing in
talked
good
about
high
that
school talent. Yeah, we have
on the last
for
show.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, that unlike last year,
Yeah.
the players coming in do look like they're better than the players leaving for the most part. Yeah.
You're going to be looking at a roster this season overall that has more talent than last year's did.
Yes.
That is a step in the right direction. Is it enough of a step in the right direction for Rich Rod to be coaching after this year, the next 2 years? We'll have to see. But, I definitely think that there's so many layers to the issues of players coming and going as they please when it comes to, financials, coaching, state of the program. And I guess the program in terms of an on-field product isn't where you want it to be, for sure. I think Rich Rod is capable of getting the team there from a coaching standpoint, but depends on, I think it can almost be true that every coach needs their sort of guys to come in and buy into their philosophy. But I don't know. I mean, I personally do not want Rich Rod yelling at me. And of course, I'm not a Division I football player.
I could imagine Rich Rod yelling at Luke Blain. I can see.
Well,
would Luke Blain cower in fear? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'd stand tall. I think I like to think I would. But
I get him at press conferences. He's right here. He didn't yell yet. But if you look at the video of when I asked about the quarterback position at Ohio, I was right in front of Rich Rodriguez, and we were at the practice facility for Ohio because they didn't really give us anywhere else to do the damn presser.
Yeah.
Which is just the culmination of how horrible of a loss that was. And he gave me a look like, maybe in his younger years we would have been on CNN because he would have clocked me one. But he didn't. But he definitely has been. He definitely has been upset with me throughout our only one season.
No,
of work.
for sure.
And I can't say he yelled, but I feel like he wanted to. Maybe he yelled when he left the press conference room or left dealing with me. So I feel like I stood tall in those scenarios. Yeah. And I actually have heard him. We've all heard him. He had the viral clip that took place at fall camp practice.
Yeah.
Before this past season. I can even tell you, being in, many of those press conferences, even after games, certainly even on the road, I went down there to see the UCF collapse in the second half and heard his reaction and how he talked to his players and what was said there. Thin wall between us waiting for him to come talk to us and then what was being said there. And I'm not going to give more, but let's just say, maybe some people were cowering in fear. There was no fun being had. Nobody was enjoying themselves. And what Rich Rod was telling them and his energy and, his anger and frustration was probably a higher tone than Neil Brown would ever provide. Let's just say it was a very angry Rich Rodriguez. And Luke, to be fair, and I kind of have said this publicly as well, the way to not have that occur is to not collapse in the second half and play way worse than you did. They were in the game at halftime, and then that's a UCF program that did not spend more money, that also had a first-year coach coming in, that roster was no better, and they weren't even that better of a team all year, and they just mopped the floor with you in the second half. They all kind of deserve to get yelled at a little bit. So Rich Rod has the ability. I think there's a misconception there. If you talk to his players, the Steve Slaytons of the world back in the day, and they won a lot, but even Rasheed Marshall, who dealt with some losses, and going way back, Jed Drenning, who dealt with losses way back at Glenville State. Yeah, if you lose, he's going to, I guess for lack of a better word, maybe be a dick to you. It's going to be tough in practices. It's not going to be fun in games and practices because he wants you to work hard and he wants to make you a better player and have that lead to success. If you win, though, you mentioned it, he will dance in the locker room. He said, no, don't go on TikTok, before the season starts. But if you go ahead and win the Big 12, I bet you any money he's going to warrant a TikTok video and the Big 12 can go ahead and post it. Like, he'll give you that reward if you play hard for him. If you don't and you loaf, which is the word that he uses and the word that he kind of loved throwing at people up, that was too much loafing. There was loafing at the end of UCF. There was loafing even in Texas Tech, as great as they are. Still, there was loafing there. There was loafing in some of those losses this past season. Arizona State, they should have won it. The 1 yard situation, they couldn't get that repeatedly. There was even loafing in that game. Certainly loafing in Ohio. They just looked so bad and couldn't move the ball. And Rich Rod's going to let you know. I mean, it's almost in a way, and it's a different era. And, I'm 10 years older than you, so you're closer to these kids' ages. Rich Rod is, way older than me.
I don't like that it's closer to these kids' ages and not these kids' ages.
I guess you're these kids' ages.
These world-class athletes are like 4 years younger than I am. And that's
some of them are even younger. That's wild to think about. Yeah, and it makes me feel really old. I guess they are. Yeah, I guess you're the same age, although you're flirting with being too old.
A little bit.
I mean, there's going to be kids Yeah, I mean, there's going to be kids that are there 26, 27 with the way the NIL works these days, and we've already seen that in the last few years. So then they're older than you. But yeah, so it's hard for a 60-plus-year-old man to relate to them. Even the coaches who are in their 30s, more my age, it might be harder for them to relate to them. And certainly the other assistant coaches that we're seeing him bring in, like Rick Trickett coming back, and you're getting coaches, in their 40s and their 50s, also in their 60s, The retiring Jeff Castile, who's also up there in age. That is going to be a situation where maybe they're not going to relate to those players, where the players would rather their position coach be closer to their age. And Zach Alley's young, though. I mean, Zach Alley's in his early 30s, I believe. So he's close, kind of, but you got to fit the Rich Rod hard edge mold, and you got to call it the loafing and kind of be like him. Zach Alley is very much like him, despite younger, to even be on his staff. And it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody as well. I don't think it's necessarily something that is guaranteed to have success. The jury is still out. We have to see what they do this year. Obviously, and goes without saying, and everyone knows this, and he knows it too, they have to win this coming season in 2026. They can't win 4 games again, and they can't blame injuries, money, whatever. Can't do it. The money's better than it was a year ago. No, it's not Ohio State, but it's better than it was a year ago. You are recruiting better than a year ago. You had a whole year there. You went through this crap 4-8 season. You brought a little culture in, even though you lost a lot of those players, and that's the problem with losing so many guys. The players that bought into the culture, a lot of them are now gone or graduated or trying a pro career or whatever. So you got to kind of instill it again. Talented players coming in, but they need to learn the culture, because there could be talented players coming in that aren't hard edge, and you learn that in spring ball. There's no spring portal this year. So, Rich Rod is, in a way, it's good. You don't risk losing the players, Luke, but in a way it's bad, because we both know Rich Rod is almost addicted to cutting players, and he is going to be stuck with this team. I mean, this is the squad. Barring a scandal or barring somebody wanting out and you let him out of the letter, which could happen, this is it. You can add players, but there's not another portal window in particular. This is mostly going to be the team that we'll certainly see in spring ball and coming out of spring ball. So a lot of the excuses are gone, and they got to win. And if they win, a lot of that will be fixed. I mean, as funky as the beginning of the Neil Brown tenure was, and how much drama was even there throughout, and the fan base was seemingly never happy, and there was a lot of toxicity, what's the 1 year that kind of washed away a little bit? 2023, when they won 9 games. That's the year that there wasn't as much of an outcry, that people weren't as mad, and there weren't the locker room vampires that players talked about. All of a sudden in that year, it's better, because they're winning more games. That's really what it's going to be, and I think the reason why the jury is still out is because of what players are saying. A younger coach maybe wouldn't have to deal with this, but we have also seen it work, and somebody brought it up here as we're streaming this live in the chat. We'll also podcast this after the show, of course. Mountaineer Report, Luke Blain, Mike Asti with West Virginia sports now that it is working for Curt Cignetti. So even if Nick Saban left because he didn't want to have to deal with it, and Curt Cignetti is dealing with more money than WVU has for sure. I mean, Indiana spent a lot of money. That's part of building that team up. That's part of why he's having success there that was never seen before. But he does have the no smile, never be satisfied mentality. Yeah. And yet the Heisman winner, many other great players are buying in, and then you can celebrate after winning, and they've been winning all these games and won every game to this point, and we'll see if they win a national title. So it certainly has been working for Curt Cignetti. Yeah.
Yeah, you can also say that Curt Cignetti has had more proven success in recent years than Rich Rod has. I mean, he really built
going back to JMU.
Yeah, he built a really good program at JMU, and then those guys followed him to Indiana, a bunch of guys who already knew his system. And, Rich Rod coming from Jack State to WVU didn't really bring too many Jack State players, minus, Cam Vaughn, Fred Perry, but that was about it.
And Cam Vaughn, I'll tell you, they're not really feeling he's hard edge. He's bouncing out. He's no longer with the program, and he was kind of told that you don't really fit. And to be fair, he didn't come back on an interception. He's not really the best guy to be around. He kind of has loafed at times. He's a little bit about himself, and that doesn't fit the Rich Rod personality. So even a player that Rich Rod thought was a Rich Rod guy that he brought over because of his talent, he later learned that's not really a Rich Rod guy. And he's willing to get rid of guys and willing to go through bringing in new players all the time, which it cannot work every year. This is still half of last year, but still a lot of players to deal with constantly. And yeah, now Rich Rod did win a conference title at Jack State. He had success there. He also brought them up from being FCS to being FBS. Same kind of thing that Curt Cignetti did. There's parallels of Curt Cignetti at JMU to Rich Rod at Jack State. The difference is that Rich Rod prior to that had a lot of Power 4 success at WVU and then a little at Arizona. Curt Cignetti didn't get any Power 4 opportunities prior to JMU. And then when he gets one in Indiana, he wins 26 games in 2 years. Right now is looking at an undefeated national championship season that arguably could be the greatest season of all time in the history of the sport for a program that was the losingest in college football history just a couple of years ago. And yes, again, there's a lot more money there. It has the largest alumni base in the country, as insane as that sounds. Quite frankly, they should have probably won more games in the past when a lot of schools were cheating. They might as well have cheated. But nonetheless, I don't know why it took them so long to actually give a damn about football. But now that they do, they're set up for the future with Cignetti, and his attitude is working. He's around the same age. He's even older than Rich Rod. There are some fair comparisons there, and even West Virginia connections, obviously. So that type of region. Cignetti from Pittsburgh, but obviously went to WVU. So similar personality, even in a way. But if Rich Rod was winning a Big 12, you might have players thinking, okay, it sucks we can't go on TikTok. We're not having fun in here, but we're not going to go on social media and rake the program through the coals, and we're going to keep continuing this on because we want to keep doing this. I'm sure there's Indiana players that aren't loving every minute of practice and games and are a little bit annoyed that, we're up by 30 and you're yelling at me. That's a little ridiculous. But that's just, they're bought in, and they bought into the culture, and they're bought in, and we're seeing the result. And it really is from the Heisman QB on down. When the QB buys in, everyone else is going to buy in. And that's also what I've been saying, Luke, that maybe he's found it with Michael Hawkins Jr. now. Maybe it'll be Scotty Fox. Okay, maybe it'll be Hawkins Jr. Maybe it'll be Scotty Fox. When Rich Rod finds the quarterback, I think a lot of this will be fixed. I think when he finds his Mendoza, then things will kind of fall into place. I'm not saying that's all you need to do, but that's part of this. He doesn't have that guy. He hasn't had that guy. And the 5 guys from 2025 just weren't good enough at all. What are your thoughts on a player who didn't play for Rich Rod that left after Neil Brown, that's clearly a name player with an NFL legacy that's trying to turn pro now in Trotter, joining this conversation? Why is Trotter entering the chat?
That is an odd one. Like, especially to say that nobody effed with Rich Rod and he wasn't there, again, I'm not trying to criticize him, but it's like, how much information does he actually have? Of course, I'm sure he kept in contact with some of the guys who were still in the locker room, but like the defensive turnover there was crazy. Like it was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's friends with some people on the offense as well, but I don't know. It really feels like he doesn't have a dog in the fight when it comes to this conversation. And Sure,
I guess maybe that's why he left. I mean, I think he left because he got a lot of money, got a bag elsewhere. I mean, that was part of the he got money. I mean, he was a talented player with Neil Brown, but
if you're good, if you're a high level defensive player, would you rather stick around at WVU, who's going to go through a rebuild season, or would you rather go play for an SEC school?
Yeah, I mean, granted, he didn't win that many more games. He didn't have that great of a year either for their team, but he got money. Yeah, and he tried. And I actually thought it was odd that there wasn't even a bigger school that wanted him, because he was clearly a solid future pro. His body type was that. Yeah. He was kind of that diamond from the rough that was the 2024 defense. I thought even a better program would have nabbed him up. He went to Missouri. But yeah, I wouldn't have stayed either if I was him. He could have had tons of options. I'm surprised he didn't even get in a better situation. But it's weird that he's involved now, because yes, I'm sure he texts with guys, and maybe he had a one-on-one with Rich Rod. What are you going to sell to me for me to stay? And he decided to go. But outside of that, how much does he know Rich Rodriguez, and how much was he around anything? He certainly wasn't in the locker room before and after games. He certainly wasn't at practices throughout the year. I mean, he left pretty early in Rich Rod's journey this past season. That was really, really odd. And I do think there's a little bit of, you have to look at the sources here. Jaheim White played a game and a half last year. He was recruited by Neil Brown. He was a Chad Scott guy. I've said this repeatedly. I know this to be a fact. He had to be convinced multiple times, including Steve Slayton on the phone twice, to come back even last year. He almost left before last year with Rich Rod. He's a great running back. I wish we could have saw him under Rich Rod more than a game and a half. But, again, I've also heard that he kind of was told that you can't guarantee the starting spot. We'll take you, but, we're not going to give you the bag, and we're going to bring in Cam Cook, who maybe will be the top guy. So when you hear all that, and then Jaheim White goes on TikTok Live and talks about how he didn't like Rich Rod, does that not look like a bitter ex who got dumped is now going to be upset? I mean, you have to look at the source as well. And back in the day, who knows what Pat White and Steve Slayton would have been saying on social media after their practices if that existed back then. Because I'm sure they were tough and they were rough. And I can tell you from even talking to them, the practices now under Rich Rod, even as tough as he is now, are not as tough as they were then. Luke, I've heard that. As tough as he is now, even to these kids, he was tougher back then. He's actually dialed it back for this era already. I mean, and it's too tough for these kids now. Do you think he needs to change, regardless of who's at fault or who the source is here? Do you think he needs to change it all, or is the fact that he did better in recruiting this year still showing that he does have cachet that, say, Bob Huggins had for many years with basketball, that people would come just to play for him, a Hall of Fame coach? He was really, really tough. He'd throw players under the bus publicly, but they would come and play for him, and most of the time he was in the tournament. That looks like that was a concern, but the players he's getting this year in terms of Rich Rod maybe dispels that a little bit. I mean, you're getting really solid P4 transfers. Yes, they're getting money, but they know who the coach is. I'm sure they text people that were on the team. They hear what's obviously on social media, and they're signing anyway. That has to show that he's still, at least right now for this year, able to throw some weight around because of his resume, even if he is a hard edge style coach.
Yeah, I think that there is something to be said for. I mean, if you would have had a repeat of last year where everybody leaves and you're not bringing in any Power 4 talent in the portal, we would definitely be having the conversation of Rich Rod's not built for this era, things of that nature. But knowing that he is bringing in some talented players from SEC schools, other parts of the country, I think there is definitely something to be said for players knowing what they're signing up for and still coming here, especially, some of those guys who are high-end talent. I think the offense is going to be exciting this year because of that. They landed some good wide receiver transfers. Seems like the offensive line rebuild is coming along nicely. I will say, just want to shoehorn this in here, I do think Parker Navarro should be at the top of their list right now in terms of going and getting a quarterback. We can get into him. I would love to. I did just want to bring that up, but I saw
he's in the portal now, and the confusing thing is that I almost thought he was out of eligibility before that, but I know he's applying for that extra year. It appears he's in the portal and applying for it. I don't know if he's a guarantee, so there could be some risk there. But
could be true.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if everything that everyone's heard, again, they're not rolling in cash, but if you have a little bit to play with still, do you consider having a three-way quarterback battle? I mean, Hawkins has signed. Scotty Fox is still there. Do you have a three-way battle? Do you tell Scotty Fox you have tons of eligibility left? Let it be the veterans battling out and you below them? Do you play multiple guys? When we were sitting there in Athens watching Ohio win that game, many people were saying Parker Navarro fits Rich Rod more than he even fits the Ohio team. Like, that could be Rich Rod's QB. Now, granted, at most he'd have 1 year, but this is the year you got to win. Yeah, that's a fair thought.
No, I'm definitely I was always a big fan of Parker Navarro's game.
Okay.
So seeing him in WVU's system and seeing, like, I think right now, I think the main thing should be, and I think this is what they're buying into as well, you need to try to get the offense to its full potential this coming season. And, you know, you have Scotty Fox, you have Hawkins back there. But if you could have a chance to get a guy like Parker Navarro, who I think, given the current circumstances, could absolutely be quarterback one on this team, I think that would absolutely be a huge get for the Mountaineers. But, you know, is he hard edge? Is he going to come in and work?
Right.
Is he, you know, all those, you know, those are questions that you're just going to have to level with now that Rich Rod is the head coach. So I absolutely, you know, I think that there's a path forward with the hard edge to just kind of get back to what you originally asked.
He also could maybe not get, I looked it up just for the purpose of this. He is having to seek the 7th year. So like, it's not a guarantee. That's a long time. It's not a guarantee. We've seen players get turned down for that. It could be a risk if you bring him in and piss off the other QBs and then he doesn't get the eligibility, then you lose the locker room. It could be a risk, but he does really, really fit in. It's too bad they couldn't get him last year. That would have been the year. But yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see. You know, obviously Rich Rod has more time this time around to see if the guys available really are his guys and want to buy into that system. But, you know, I'm just thinking about it in terms of the results we got last season. Didn't look great. Now you have players leaving and saying this and that about Rich Rod in the locker room. Of course, Trotter being one of them, I don't think carries too much weight in terms of, you know, like the fact that he wasn't there. But I think that, you know, that there's opportunities here for WVU for sure. It's just a matter of getting those guys.
Yeah, there's definitely opportunity. There's definitely more talent now. We're definitely seeing a little bit of the fruits of the labor financially again that, you know, Rich Rod talked about. You're not going to get into the level where you're ever going to be spending what Texas Tech is spending, for example, almost $30 million just off of last season when they won the Big 12, maybe even more coming up. They're right up there in the transfer ranks, even ahead of West Virginia, who's actually been ranked in the top 10, top 15 for some national publications and what they're doing in the portal in terms of players that are coming in. It's kind of higher than West Virginia's normally ranked, even in good years. That's also telling. But all of that does kind of lend credence to that there is more money there. Rich Rod said, you get to $10 million. I'm a great coach. My staff is great. We can kind of make up for other ground, and then that's how you can really judge us. That's the paraphrase him. And that's, I think, is getting fair. If you get to 10 million, the whole selling point of Rich Rod was he's a better coach than Neil Brown. He's proven it. Pat White was not a 4-star. Steve Slayton was not a 4-star. Like, he's built up 3 or lesser stars and made them Hall of Famers and legends and won a lot of games. And yeah, it's been a long damn time, but he also did it briefly at Arizona. And he even got a lot out of not so much at Jack State. Okay. I mean, Huff, their QB, was unathletic, they even admit, and he ran for a lot of yards there. Granted, it's not a power 4 situation. So he usually gets the most out of his guys. Maybe last year was handicapped with all the injuries and drama and didn't have enough time and got there late, and the money then was not nearly what it has to be, barely over what Neil Brown had his last year. So maybe, you know, I could see fans being mad they were kind of lied to about the money will be fine, and it wasn't. Sure, but it does appear the money's better now, even going to high school recruiting and stealing Kevin Brown and what they're paying him, and, you know, getting Matt Sieg. I know for a fact, this has even been confirmed with people I know that cover Pitt and Pitt sources, that part of why West Virginia won that recruiting battle was they flat out outbid Pitt financially, and Pitt wanted him. They wanted him bad. They brought a truck to all his freaking high school games, and they ended up not getting him. So again, that's another positive for the program. It also eliminates an excuse if they don't win this year, but the talent should be able to show itself if coached well, and even if they're not going to spend to the Red Raiders level or even top of the conference, if you get the great coaches around players with more talent and can coach them up, and you at least get to a certain level of talent, you should at least be able to compete more at minimum, even if there's still a ceiling for it. It should be more around 7, 8 instead of 4 wins. That should be possible. And we've seen quick turnarounds in this era. But if they have another real bad year and players go on social media and do this again, and then you see more players leave that were expected to not leave, then you really got to evaluate it. I don't think Ren Baker wants, even if they don't have a great year next year, to only give Rich Rod 2 years. I would more say that year 3 is the really year to look at if this doesn't go well. But if there's really a concern about it, if he's too hard edge, then Ren, talk about ages. I mean, Ren's in his 40s. Ren's not in his 60s. Ren's just as close to these kids on the team as he is to Rich Rod. He's right in the middle. I mean, he's all over social media himself. He's not, he's too old to be a millennial, but he's like I believe he's out of the millennial thing, but he's just like a cusp above that in terms of being an AD there. He's a young AD. Most ADs are not that age. Most ADs are older. So maybe he gets them more than, say, a Shane Lyons would or some other ADs would. And maybe, he'll have to say to Rich Rod, hey, maybe you're too old school. Who knows? But Rich Rod, he's different than he was, back in the day. He's different than when he coached the first time. He's different than when he was at Arizona. He's different than he was at Michigan. He's different than he was even recently at Jack State. He says this, but it's true. It was annoying to hear so much last year. But I do think he's kind of a little different now, and I don't think he's as crazy as some of these players are making it out to be. We will see how this team performs, though. Again, they did better in the portal this year. They had to. The roster and talent looks better. They just got to win freaking games, and spring ball is even more important this year without that spring portal in front. And we will definitely see what they do at certain positions, because they still could add a few more pieces, few more players. They may try to drop players even without a portal window after spring ball and bring others in, because you can still add the guys that are in the portal now whenever, as long as they're available. And who knows? Parker Navarro is an interesting thought if he does get granted that 7th year of eligibility. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, West Virginia Sports Now. And we're talking on a Friday. We're talking in front of a weekend. We're talking in front of a weekend and a day that's going to be important for the basketball program, because they are coming off a really, really rough loss. Yes, to a great team, but they were totally, embarrassed in a way and dominated by Houston. Iowa State opened up Big 12 play, slapping them around as well. They do have the upset victory over a ranked, at the time, Kansas team, which is finally a quality win for the program. That is their first quality staple win of the season. We saw many staple wins not get them in the tournament last year, so they still have work to do to try to get in this year. And they're going all over the place, from 74 to 69 to 68 to 72, all over Ken Palm, but not nearly good enough in Ken Palm. Colorado coming up, it's a very winnable game, but they even lost to them last year, which some believe screwed them out of the tournament. Which team do you think is for real? Because we've seen a very helter-skelter Mountaineer team, and I'm talking really just in Big 12 play, but we certainly saw them helter-skelter before Big 12 play. But which team is for real? Well, can they win enough in conference play to be a tournament player, or are they more the team that is just not even able to be competitive with the top dogs in the conference?
Well, I think there's a middle ground there.
Okay.
And I don't think it's fully one or the other. I'm not going to say that next, I think Saturday, they're going to go to Arizona and upset them.
Right.
I can't confidently say that they're going to go do that, but I do think they are better than these middle of the pack teams they're about to see. I do feel confident in this team getting wins over Colorado and Arizona State. I think they play on a good night. They play well enough to be better than those teams. But if they come out there and they don't play well enough, then they are going to lose. If they, take the second half off, and I don't want to say take the second half off, but if they don't play up to that standard, they're going to lose, Yeah. But there are paths to victory in these games, and a lot of it comes from the front court. And I think Houston just showcased another day where I don't think the front court played as well as he wanted them to. Yeah. Whereas against Kansas, I think that outside of Pitt, that's probably Harlan Obioha's best game this season. That if you get out rebounded, if you turn the ball over more, you're going to lose. They allowed a lot of second chance points to Houston in that one. Houston did everything that they wanted to do from an offensive standpoint for the most part. But I think, it just comes down to the fact that, Houston is just a better team than they are. And I don't think that's anything to raise the alarm bells over, losing at Houston and Iowa State, who are both top 10 teams in the country. Losing, even in the fashion that they did, that's not something to just sound the alarms over. I think we need to start getting to the point where we understand just how much of a unicorn season last year was with Darren DeVries, where they go out there and they beat Kansas at home and they upset number 3 Iowa State on their court. Now,
beat Gonzaga.
Beat Gonzaga. If Houston or Iowa State would have played here this season, I do definitely think that there could have been, I don't want to say, I think WVU
home and away is different for sure. There's a reason why.
Better.
Yeah, I mean they have the Kansas win at home.
Such hostile environments. It's not easy to
100%.
go into top 10 ranked teams' houses and beat them, and they're going to do it. They're going to have to try to do it again whenever they go to Arizona. I believe Arizona is still number 1 right now. So it's just. I don't think the schedule favors them very much. Unfortunately, they did dig themselves into a hole in the non-con play. That is. I mean, it's like being down 28-5, like you were against Houston. You have very little margin for error the rest of the way, and they do have to steal a few on the way into the tournament if they want to be there, and they probably have to make a good run in the Big 12 tournament. I can't confidently say they're capable of that right now. What I do think is coming along is the way the team is developed whenever they are in those situations to win a game at the end in the Big 12 play. They've done that. They've done that twice. They did it against Cincinnati and they did it against Kansas. That's more than you can say for the Ohio State game, the Clemson game. You can't even put the Xavier game in that category because Xavier just hit everything they shot. So, but, if you beat Clemson, you're not playing Xavier. So it's a different story.
Right.
I definitely, I think this team, for a first-year head coach, is having an all right season. I think WVU fans are really just kind of getting entrenched in the expectations that their expectations were exceeded last season.
Yeah, I told you this was going to happen, though. Did I not? I said, what you're saying is fair, but I knew this, that DeVries, even though everyone hates him, he had a damn good year for year one, and he took over worse than Hodges taking over. I mean, he took over interim Eiler, who was in over his head, and that was the worst season, one of the worst seasons you can argue with the Catlett last year in program history. And then he ended up a 10-win turnaround. Everybody thinks they should have made the tournament, and they had staple victory after staple victory, all these top 10 wins, 3 top 10 wins. Luke, to paint the picture, and I've done this before, but this needs said again for anyone tuning in new, in Huggins' Final Four season, in Elite 8 years, in Sweet 16 years, in his 3 out of 4 Sweet 16 run, in years with Deuce McBride and Javon Carter and NBA players, when Beeline took him to the Elite 8 with Pitt Snoggle, going way, way back to even in the 40s when they now claim a national title from that 42 season, with Jerry West in the 50s when they were in the national championship game and runner-up that year, and Jerry West was becoming a legend and then would go on to be the logo with the Lakers. None of those seasons included 3 top 10 wins. That's what DeVries did last year.
Yeah.
DeVries had a really great season. Now, they didn't win enough overall to make the tournament, and there was controversy there with Bubba Cunningham screwing them, and Tucker DeVries was out a lot of games, and was he really hurt? And then DeVries leaves, and that year, a lot of Mountaineer fans want to forget. But for DeVries to walk in and have a 10-win turnaround, there are going to be fans that are going to say to Ross Hodge, we don't like DeVries. We don't want him here anymore, but we also don't want to be a worse team because we got a better guy. We want to win games. I mean, that guy won more games than you. That guy won bigger games than you. That guy was in the NCAA tournament before getting here. He looked more ready than you. This is your first big-time job. That guy had been through the fire before, and you're coming in here dropping games you shouldn't drop in out-of-conference play. And, yeah, these games are tough. They were the same schedule happened with DeVries, and he didn't one time say it was too tough. I'm not saying Hodge is putting that on himself, But if we start hearing that from the program, hearing that even from media that work for the program, and knowing what happened last year, fans are going to tune it out. They're going to say that's some BS. We just did it last year. Just did it. It's not. People used to say before last year with DeVries that West Virginia is not like it was in the past, and now it would take a journey to turn it around, and Eilert would make them have to take 5 years to even be good. And DeVries said, "Hold my beer. Here's 10 more wins." He proved that wrong in this era. And Hodge is given a vibe, even when we talked last show on kind of what he says about the overall life of the program, that he needs more of a journey. He's a better guy. He's a great coach. I think he will eventually win, and maybe even they'll be fine this year. They do have a staple win, at least one. That's a hard sell when people had a guy that was able to do it right away. That's the thing.
No, I definitely think that's true. I think the case that I'm going to make there is just that was a season that was so out of the ordinary in terms of what they were able to do. And Javon Small ended up being way better than advertised, truthfully. I don't think anybody expected him to be that good.
True.
You know, I do think, like I said it coming into this season, I think this roster had more raw talent coming in than last year's did.
More depth.
I think you have more depth, absolutely. So I absolutely, you know, I had high expectations coming into this season, and they didn't live up to it. They lost some games that they absolutely should have won. I'm not going to shy away from that, but it is just, you know, I think fans have to come to terms with the fact that what happened last year is so out of the ordinary in terms of what a first-year head coach is able to do. And, you know, and I probably got caught up in that a little bit too whenever I said that they could be a Big 12 contender at the beginning. I said that, but
they have depth this year. I mean, the plan was you would have more than one top scorer. Last year when Tucker DeVries went out, it was just Javon Small, and if he couldn't score, they couldn't get over 60. They couldn't win. This year they built a team with multiple solid scores and multiple shooters, and being able to have depth in scoring. Is it Hodges' fault that Eagle staff has had a roller coaster ride? He looks better now, to give him credit. He had a big shot against Cincinnati. He's getting in double digits and scoring most of these games. He's taking more shots, even if he doesn't hit them. He's taking shots early in games. He looks better now. But in the out-of-conference play, up and down games where he would take 2 to 3 shots and look like he's in the witness protection program. He got benched because of lack of defense. He just wasn't worth the money in the out-of-conference play. And as you put it, even if he's great in the in-conference play, and even if they win all these Big 12 games, if they don't make the tournament, they can blame the out-of-conference play because the overall season exists. It's not just a few months here in Big 12 play, and they didn't get enough quality wins when they were available against similar programs in games that even they were leading in and then would blow in the out-of-conference play. And now this Big 12 schedule is brutal, but Colorado's a must-win. You got to get as many wins that aren't against top 10 teams. You can't do kind of what you did last year where it was a big staple win, top 10 team, and then, you know, you dip down and maybe get upset. You can't afford that because you had a rough out-of-conference situation. DeVries also kind of cleaned up more in conference play or in out-of-conference play before getting into in-conference play. So that was a big advantage, that Gonzaga win. He had a Gonzaga win going into the Big 12 schedule. Ross Hodge, his best win going into the Big 12 schedule was Pitt, and Pitt is just not nearly a contender at all. They're worse than you in every metric and how they played all year as well. What do you think is the most important thing this Mountaineer team needs to do on the court to do enough in Big 12 play to at least be on the bubble?
Well, they got to have a better paint presence. I think that's the biggest thing. You know, Houston was able to force them outside. I think, I forget, at one point in the game yesterday, WVU had shot 19 threes. Like, they had absolutely shot more threes than shots inside of the arc. And there just has to be some way for them to get inside. I think keeping a healthier rotation might be part of the remedy there. You know, I don't think Harlan Obioha has played to the level that that I thought he was able to, I think fans thought he was able to. Sure. I think you got to be able to get some more downhill scoring. I think some, you know, like the East-West basketball is fine, But if you're not getting into the lane, then it's not going to, bring you anything other than an honor huff 3 at the end of the shot clock. So there has to be some sort of inside scoring. You have to be able to suck the defense inside and then kick it out for the threes instead of just shooting contested threes every time. But, they have some good paint scores. I think, DJ Thomas has done really well. I mean, DJ Thomas kept him in that game, in the game against Houston, for the majority of the first half.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, that's where
he's had a solid year for who he is.
I've been very impressed with him.
Yeah.
I think you just have to find a way to get to the basket, other than just shooting it from the outside. You have to be able to, get Chance Moore downhill. And you didn't really see a lot of that from him this game. But whenever he did, he got fouled. And you go to the free throw line, and then you're able to get some clean looks there. So getting the best Big 12 teams get to the paint, and they get to the basket, and they score there. And then they're able to kill you from outside.
Just saw it with Houston. Yep. I mean, they have the textbook, which is exactly what Ross Hodge said as intro presser, that he wants to build a program that's very like Houston, that is physical, that gets to the paint, that has the size. You could argue if Ross Hodge has enough of it this year, not really, but Houston's really, really big. Also can shoot. I mean, Houston's not known for their offense, but we saw it against West Virginia this year. And then even if you look at their tournament run last year and their box scores, they can hang points if they have to. I mean, they had 90-point games in that run to the championship game last year. They're not known for offense. They mostly win 70-some to 60-some, but they can score if they have to. I don't think West Virginia could score 90 points if nobody was out there playing defense. I mean, they just can't do it. Houston can. The elite teams can. So if the Mountaineers are going to win, they're going to win games 68, 64, 72 at max, 68, 62, 60. Those box scores, those scores, that's probably what they want to do. They're a great defensive team, at least effort-wise. They're one of the better defensive teams in the conference. Offensively, it's not nearly enough, and Hunter Huff can't do it alone at his size. But if Eagle staff can keep it moving, if they can find enough rebounding-wise, if they can use their size, the little bit that they do have, if Obi Oha can play big and play to his size, play to his strength, and they can work in the paint, then they can compete with more of these teams in the Big 12 than they're showing. And I also think that nobody would have been mad if they would have lost to Iowa State and they would have lost to Houston. But the way they lost those games, that kind of gives you pause that even the games that West Virginia would lose a year ago, and even though they did lose a solid amount of games, and even though that, there were some maybe circumstances that allowed them to get those upset wins, there weren't many where they're losing by 30 and they're not even in the game, 10 minutes in. We've seen that multiple times with Ross Hodge this year. You don't want to see that too often. That's not what a West Virginia fan from a blue-collar state is going to want to see, a total blowout and a team that looks like they're just completely outmatched and maybe, realizes it towards the end. So that got to change even if they would still lose. And, we'll see where they land here. I don't think they're making the tournament, but I think if they can somehow get in there and fight and even get in the conversation at the end of the year, maybe another staple win or so is needed, and also certainly need to advance in Big 12 play. They didn't go anywhere last year, and maybe that would have helped them get in. If you don't believe the conspiracy, they would have been screwed anyway. But I'll digress. That certainly could help as well, and we'll see. And then that could be a feather in the cap of Ross Hodge, is if he even makes them relevant or in the conversation for a team that maybe kind of was out of it and pushed back because they had a rough go and out of conference play, and we'll see where they are. You still would like to see them get more into the top 60 in KenPom, just to show something out of this year, or in any metric. In the net, they're even worse in the net. I mean, to barely be in the top, sometimes out of the top 70, that's a problem. But we'll see where this goes. We'll see where this goes. And last thing here is we're going to close up shop in this edition of Mountaineer Report. Again, Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, West Virginia Sports Now. I'm actually going to be filling in for Luke, who does our basketball games, but he is going to be going to a wedding, have some wedding fun here in the winter.
Not
see how
mine.
those pictures are going to be.
Not mine,
yeah, not. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're not getting married yet, and hopefully an indoor wedding for you. With the snow and frigid temperatures here in January. I'm going to be covering that one at the Coliseum, so look for my coverage on the site. But the women's team, I don't want to say they've been hot and cold. They've obviously been a really good program and a really good team, and they've shown they can compete with anybody this year. They also have a staple win from the last few days, but they also have lost in heartbreaking fashion. So it's been only a roller coaster ride because they've had some heartbreaking losses. They did have a real bad blowout loss to Villanova weeks and weeks ago. But in Big 12 play, they've shown they can compete with anybody, and they should have probably got that victory, but you lose in heartbreaking fashion. How do you see this women's team responding? Because they need more quality wins to get the seed line they want. They squander some opportunities in out-of-conference play as well, and even though they're a really good team and maybe they could get back to being ranked, and they had that rank to win as well, that seed is looking like it's going to be 7 or 8 or 9 again, and that's not where they want to be unless they get more quality wins. And Mark Kellogg said at the beginning of this year, that is the goal now, to get a solid top 4 seed line, to be able to host the game in Morgantown. And it looks like that is just not even going to be a possibility unless they start getting some staple victories, not just their old common win against everybody else.
Yeah, and they don't really have that many more opportunities for staple wins along the way, right? I have Baylor. They're going to host Baylor. That's a team that they've had some real battles with recently. Arizona's solid. They are going to go play TCU at TCU. So, if you are able to split with them and beat them on the road, then honestly, with them being a top 10 team in the country, can't really complain about that. I think what was it? Elite Eight they made last year? I can't remember, but anyway,
TCU?
Yeah. But it's the time where now a loss to one of those teams who's not considered in the upper echelon of the Big 12 is going to be a real backbreaker when it comes to seedings. Those are going to be losses that teams look at. I think they are going to probably need to make a run in the Big 12. And they haven't had.
I don't know if they can lose again. You look at this schedule the rest of the way. They play one more ranked. They play 2 more ranked teams. It's Baylor, and then it's the TCU team that you mentioned that they lose on a buzzer beater. They have a chance to beat them again, but it'll be in Fort Worth. Those are the only 2 current ranked teams they have left. Cincinnati, Arizona State, BYU, Utah. They got to win all those games, or they're definitely not going to have a chance at anything close to. Hosting is probably done, but even to have a solid seed line that you have a chance to advance and not be a 10 or plus seed line, if they aren't careful, they're going to be a double-digit seed. They're in the tournament, likely, unless it really goes down the drain. But they got an 8 seed when they had a better year than they've had right now.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not getting any favors thrown out their way either. Yeah,
I definitely, I think that they are going to probably need to make a run in the Big 12 tournament. But I think a good positive for this team is, even with their losses in Big 12 play, they've never been out of the game. They've never had a team that just takes over and blows them out of the water. Play. That has been the case in past years, and arguably with teams where you can make the argument that you've had more talent. They went and beat Iowa State on the road. That's a really good win. And then you come right down to the wire with TCU. Like the win against Iowa State is absolutely going to be something that helps you when it comes to seeding time.
Yeah.
And you don't get another opportunity against them unless it's in the Big 12 tournament. But I think the rest of the way, you really need to hit your stride, because you can't be kind of so in these games. But also, I haven't seen anything from this team to show me that they are going to be so in these games. I look at the schedule and I see games that they can be competitive in, that they can take down to the wire. And the thing about going down to the wire is that either team can win. And you saw that against TCU. We're having a much different conversation if that shot doesn't go in.
If they win that game, they're probably back in the conversation for a top tier seed line. They're probably back into that opportunity at minimum. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely, I think a top 4 seed is definitely still in play. I think that, there's a path here. You're still going to have the Big 12 tournament where you'll have a chance probably to see, they advance. And I could see this team making the semis of the Big 12 tournament again and potentially making a championship run. But, they are playing to that Kellogg defensive identity. They're playing very good defense. They dragged TCU down into the mud with them. And, we've kind of said that's going to have to, that's going to be how the men's team has to win. And the women's team is doing that very successfully. They still, I think that there's just, you got to find ways to pull out those late games which is something that this team has struggled with in every year of the Kellogg era. There's been times every season where games go down to the wire and then they just slip away. You have to be able to instill confidence in the committee that you're able to pull those games out and, finish those with a win, because those, at the end of the day, results really matter when it comes down to what they're looking for when it comes to seeding in NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and fortunately for them, they didn't just beat Iowa State. They beat Iowa State pretty convincingly. They had a double-digit victory over the Cyclones. Now, unfortunately for them, you can lose on a buzzer beater. You took TCU down in the mud, no big deal. But they also lost to Texas Tech. So they only had a few ranked games on this Big 12 schedule, and, they're 1-2 right now in those. And there's only a couple more left. One of them is to a team that already beat you, who's then going to be at home. It's not, you can't come out of the ranked games with only one win and then complain about seed line. They're going to get in the tournament. They have enough overall victories. They're just a quality program now that'll get that benefit of the doubt. But if it's about the seed line, which it really is, they need to win more big games. We'll see how they perform, though. I imagine they're going to respond well. I imagine Mark Kellogg is going to have them respond well. We've seen that before, that after a hiccup, they then respond really, really well. We've seen that this year. Even after that Villanova embarrassment, they responded very, very well. So I imagine they're going to be they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. They're going to get in. They're certainly not going to collapse. But the expectations, and maybe it wasn't fair after Quinterly was leaving. You don't have a WNBA player on this team. People thought maybe they could take a step back this year, and yet they're still in the tournament conversation because Kellogg is a great coach and they have overall depth there. But are they going to actually have that year where they can win a Big 12 conference championship? Are they going to have that year where they can make a Sweet 16 appearance because they have a better seed line? Are they even going to dream of ever hosting in Morgantown? Those are things that are now the goals of the program. None of those look to be happening this year. We will then see about the future and, see Mark Kellogg's future as well. Because, I've heard some things that some jobs that could come open, maybe could lure him away. And, I know he likes it there, but we'll see how long he's around. That was a whole thing people were kind of worried about a little bit under the radar this past offseason. Didn't happen. I can't guarantee it's not discussed again this offseason from what I've heard from a really good reporter who covers women's basketball that is a voter that is really in tune with those things. And he dropped a program that could pull Kellogg away. We'll see what happens, but they need to probably win at least one of those, Baylor or TCU, one of those remaining ranked games, in order to have a solid seed line where they really want to be. That'll do it for this edition of the show. Thanks to everybody who chatted along, by the way. You also can find this show in podcast form. Of course, Luke Blain, Mike Asti. This show is available everywhere you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, etc. Also on YouTube and throughout the West Virginia Sports Now Network.